Hello, guys. A warm welcome to this live session on how to improve your GMAT Focus score by 100 plus points in 40 days. And this is going to be a really interesting session because, as always, I've tried to kind of give my best, will give my best in the session today, but I'm going to summarize a lot of the key insights that I have observed over the last 1.5 years of the GMAT Focus, since when the GMAT Focus came into full play. So what I've learned through like hundreds of case studies working with different students, what are the different challenges they have faced, what worked for them, what did not work for them. A lot of that you're going to listen today. So it's going to be a very different session, very a lot of new things you'll learn about, not just the score improvement strategy, but even about the GMAT focus test in itself. Okay, so like I'm sure you'll love the session a lot. So let's start without any further ado. Okay, but yes, please feel free to go ahead and tell me more about yourself, guys. I would love to know at what phase of your preparation are you at present. So if you have been preparing for, just mention your target score and what is the amount of time you have been preparing for the GMAT, like in months. Like if you have been preparing for 2 months, just mention that in the chat. If you have been preparing for 4 months, mention that in the chat. And if you have a current mock score, do mention that. That helps me in understanding the audience, and then I can accordingly like change the content in real time and talk more about specific areas. So feel free to share more about you guys, and I hope all of you can hear me loud and clear. So if there's any audio issue, let me know. But I hope my audio should be clear to all of you. So would love to hear from you guys about your current scores, your key challenges. But yes, I'll also get started in the meantime. Okay, so let's get started, guys. So how have I structured this session? Okay, so a broad understanding of the structure. So we will talk about the importance of root cause analysis. Now, a lot of people don't understand what root cause analysis really is, or they spend too less time on the root cause analysis, and that's where they go wrong. And when you do this root cause analysis, the understanding of the GMAT focus test is also very important. What is the test really testing you on? And there's a very interesting video that GMAT Club did with one of the senior psychometrician at GMAT, who is behind the scoring algorithm, and they talked about a lot of great things, and we are going to cover some of those in our session, and how that does that impact your preparation, and how do you take that into account. Okay, obviously in that session it was they were talking about how the scoring algorithm works, but how do you take that into account in your prep? Also, we will talk about that. But root cause analysis, the importance of it is where we're going to focus on first. Then, as I said, strategies for GMAT focus. Then we'll talk about a case study. I'll just to help you understand how do you do the root cause analysis right. I'll take a case study. I'll help you understand about a current student that I'm working with, who has we have worked with him, and how did we analyze his root cause, so that you can also try and compare yourself and understand what kind of reasons you might have because of which you are lacking, basically. And then we'll use all this understanding to create an action plan, because obviously without an action plan, there's no outcome, right? And then I'm gonna keep it open for an open-ended Q&A, but doesn't mean that you're gonna ask me the questions in the end. Feel free to ask me questions during the session. I love it when you guys interact. Like the more you interact, the more energetic I feel. I feel like I want to like contribute more, and engaging audience is all a good presenter loves, right? So feel free to share your questions throughout the session, but in the end, I'll open it for an open-ended Q&A. Okay, so that's broadly the structure for you guys, and we'll get started just shortly. So I have 33 responses. Karthik tells me that it has been 4 months. I'm stuck at a score of 575. Don't worry, Karthik. You're going to learn some great techniques today to improve your score. I see Habitus saying my target is 675. I'm also stuck at 645. I'm also stuck at 575 on mocks. Anisha says I'm also stuck at 575 for 2 months now. Aim to score 685. Aviral says plateau of 575 not breaking. So it's really a coincidence. All 4 of you are stuck at the same score of 575. But I understand that's a score where a lot of people get stuck, and there's a particular reason why that happens. It's general reason behind that is that's the score where it's kind of a maximum where you can reach to with a decent understanding of the concepts. Something else is needed to break beyond that barrier, and there is another barrier which comes around 615, 625 mark, where the next barrier comes into picture. So there are like 3 different levels or 3 different barriers that you need to kind of break. And again, I'm going to talk about those as well in the session. So stay tuned with me, and you're going to definitely learn a lot. Okay, so let's get started, guys. Now, when I talk about score improvement, right? what comes to your mind? Like when I talk about this with students, most of the people do do focus on the wrong things. Again, I'm not saying these are completely wrong, but these things alone will not help. So when I talk about score improvement, most people think about doing more practice questions. They think about taking more marks, and then they think about concept building. That's what they do to improve their scores. And the reason why they do this is because their root cause analysis is sometimes faulty. Like the common problems that I hear from students, again, many of you have said that I'm stuck at a 575. I don't know how to move forward. There's a plateau that is happening. But if I ask you, why do you think you are stuck? I'm very sure some of you or many of you might come across this, like tell me these problems. Okay, I have very less time for solving questions. I feel if I have more time in the test, I could actually get almost every question correct. I do a lot of silly mistakes. I have inconsistency in verbal. I get stuck in the last two choices in verbal. I feel a lack of practice is what's stopping me from getting there. I come across a lot of new questions and then I'm not able to tackle them. And some people say it's just concept issues. I am not good at certain concepts. But what you guys need to understand is that most of these things that you're telling are symptoms which are telling us there is a bigger underlying problem that exists. And until and unless you understand the problem, you'll not be able to solve the problem. And I very, very strongly believe in this, that problem identification is all about problem solving is all about problem identification. And this is one quote I strongly believe in with one of our biggest geniuses of all time, Albert Einstein. He has this famous quote where he says, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend, and mark my words, guys, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solutions. A very inspirational quote where he very clearly says that if you really want to solve the problem, you need to understand the problem. You need to do the root cause analysis of the problem. Now, guys, I'm not talking about a question on GMAT. I'm not saying that, please don't take me wrong. I'm not saying that if you're spending 1 minute on a question, 55 seconds should be spent on understanding the question. I'm talking about when you are creating an action plan for yourself. You need to spend proper time on understanding what's causing the problem. Because if you don't understand what's leading you to the current score, what is the reason why you're stuck at the current score, there is no way in the world you're going to be able to solve it. And trust me, guys, some of you said that you have been stuck on the score for 4 months. I've seen people being stuck on the same score for more than a year. And I know some of you are listening passively. You're not telling us how much time you have been preparing for. You might have done this several times over, worked on your score improvement. But even after putting in 2-3 months of effort, you don't see any score improvement happening. Like, how many of you have faced that? I would like to see a yes or no in the chat. If you have faced that, if you have gone through that phase, do let me know. Because it's very critical for you to understand that why do you, despite putting in the effort, according to you in the right direction, why do you not see the improvement happening? The main reason is you are possibly not being able to identify the root cause of the problem. Okay. And I really praise Mayank and Aviral for being honest with us. There are a lot of people who will be passively listening and having the same problem, but I'm happy to see that you guys are owning up to it, that yes, I have faced that myself. Aviral says I've been there for 8 months. I know, Aviral, how that works. I've worked with students who have been stuck there for 1.5, 2 years as well. But within 2 months, 1 month, they were able to break that barrier just because they were able to identify the problem of the root cause. Now, we will get into the root cause, but to get the understanding of the root cause, you need to understand how the GMAT really functions. And is GMAT only testing you on quant, verbal, and TI? What is the GMAT really testing you on? Because a lot of the people don't understand the GMAT that much. And let me give you a disclaimer, guys. Whatever I'm telling you today, it is not like, some of you might find the strategies to be too advanced. Some of you might not need it if you're targeting up to a 615, 645. But my strategies are going to focus also on people, or most importantly on people who want to break the 700 mark. If you want to get to a 705, 695, the kind of scores that M7s will look at, top B schools will look at in US or Europe or even India for that matter, the kind of score you need to get there, the strategies required for that, the understanding of the GMAT that you need to require for that is what I'm going to focus on a lot in this session. Okay, so a lot of those will be advanced things. So if you are targeting a 615, 625, some of this might not be needed for you. But if you're targeting a high score, these are very, very critical things. Okay, So let's start with an interesting question. Could be a very simple question for some of you. Some of you might find it, I won't say difficult, but yes, let's see. Let's see your viewpoints. So I'm going to pose a question to you. I'm going to share the score of a particular student in the three sections. He has taken the GMAT SSU, and this is his final score. He got a 79 in data insights, he got a verbal 81, and he got a quant 82. Now, according to you, which section of the students is the weakest out of the three? Is DI the weakest, is verbal the weakest, or quant the weakest? Let me see your responses, guys. What do you think? Which section is the weakest and why? Would like to hear your thoughts? Okay, let me see if I have some responses. Yeah, quant, Anisha says. Okay, DI, Ved says, seems like that, Ved, right? DI, right? Dave says quant, Anisha says quant. Okay, Avinal says quant. I guess you guys are taking the clue from how I'm posing this question, right? That quant is the highest, possibly the weakest. Okay, same level for all. Mayank says yes. A lot of people just look at the scores and they think that basically score out of 90, like right, you get a score out of 90 in all the three areas. They treat this scale scores as actual numbers and they try to think that okay, 80 in all three areas are equal, but it is not. You'll be surprised to see only two of you have gotten the answer right, Dushyant and Manan. Great job, guys. The weakest section for this student is actually verbal. It's not quant, it's not DI. Quant and DI are at a very similar level. He's marginally better in quant and DI. But out of the three, he's weakest in verbal because his percentile is 67. Now, the percentiles are not same as scale scores. And please understand, scale scores help you get the total score. I understand that. That's important. We'll come to that also. But percentiles tell you your relative effectiveness in that section. If you are at a 67 percentile, you have not maximized your potential there. That's definitely your weakest section. Yes, lower percentile at higher marks in quant. But yes, I'm going to get to that, Dave. That's a very important observation, and I'm going to talk about that with a lot more data. So verbal is the weakest of the lot, despite the score looking definitely better than DI. Now, why does it matter? You need to understand this. See, guys, if you look at the 85 score in all the three areas, right? Quant, verbal, and DI, the percentile looks very different. In DI, this would be a crazy 98 percentile. In verbal also, that's a crazy 94 percentile. But in quant, you can say it's just a 88 percentile. That means there is a lot more scope in quant for you. And let me bring this to a conclusion. Some of you might be thinking, why does this matter? This matters because if you are looking at a score improvement, it is very, very important. It's super critical to understand and set the right sectional targets. A lot of people don't even start with that. They just have an idea, okay, I am at a 575. I need to get to a 685. If I ask you today, what is your target quant score or verbal score or DI score? How many of you know that? Let me see responses. If you know that, do share that with me in the chat. If you don't know that yet, then you need to know that. But why? Because if you don't know that and if you have not planned it the right way, you will not be able to estimate the kind of effort that we would need to put in each section. Now imagine a scenario where you think of basically an equal strategy, score strategy. Okay, like let's say your target score is 705. You try to plan for a quant 85, verbal 85, and a DI 85. That's a possible breakup of the score, right? You can get to that 705 with this breakup. Now, if you plan with this strategy, this might not be your best strategy because, again, I'm not saying this is the worst strategy. I'm saying this might not be the best strategy because the percentile for all three look very different. You have not maximized your quant potential. On the other hand, you have set the bar too high for yourself in verbal and DI. So if you want to get to that target score, possibly an equal percentile or close to equal percentile strategy could be better, where instead of targeting the 98 or the 97 percentiles in verbal and DI, you're targeting something which is more realistic. And at the same time, you're pushing your quant score up to a level where it is more realistic. So in terms of effectiveness or efficiency, it is much better for you to target a quant 87, a verbal 85, and a DI 83 if you want to get to a 705, because these three are equally tough or easy to get to. You can think of it that way. Because percentile is the right mark. That tells you how difficult it is to get to that score. Okay, guys. Now, obviously, there's a bar in the bottom very clearly saying it has to be customized based on your strengths and weaknesses. I cannot customize everything in a live session. Obviously, when we work with students, we do more customizations on this, but I'm giving you an approximate idea just to help you understand how you need to kind of think in this case. So let's take an example. How does it really matter? So let's take an example of a student who is at a current score of 655. And let's say his quant, verbal, and DI current scores are 83, 83, and 82. So this is his current score. Now, if he's planning his improvement with the equal score strategy, he's going to try to push his score in DI by 3 points and quant and verbal by only 2 points. But see how wrong that strategy would be, because in reality, he needs to just push his DI score by a single point, and his quant score he should push by 4 points. So in reality, he needs to put in possibly 4 times the effort. Like, I'm just giving an approximate idea, 4 times the effort or quant compared to what he needs to go on DI. But if he goes for the equal score strategy, he might end up pushing a lot more effort on the DI section than the quant section, but he needs to do that. Obviously, you have to account for your strengths and weaknesses. If your quant is not your possible strength, then you need to kind of push yourself higher in the verbal. So I'm right now assuming equal percentile strategy. That's a strategy that I'm going to. You have to obviously personalize based on the strengths and weaknesses. That's a very important thing. So this will help you get a good understanding as to where you should push yourself. And one important revelation that you need to keep in mind, guys, there's a significant difference that has happened from GMAT Classic and to GMAT Focus, not just in terms of the content, but even the strategy that you need to kind of go to. Because a lot of these insights or strategies that you hear on the internet are actually old school because it worked on the old GMAT. The percentiles are very different in the old GMAT. In the new GMAT Focus edition, quant needs to be perfected to get a M7 MBA. Why do I say so? So percentiles aside, let's understand this. The score in GMAT Focus gets increased by 20 points overall for every 3 points jump in scale scores, sectional scores, let's say. What I mean by that is that basically, if you improve in any section, all your total sectional scores by 3 points, doesn't matter where the improvement is coming from, whether you improve it from DI, whether you improve it from quant, whether you improve it from verbal, or you improve it from a mix of all 3 areas, your overall score goes up by 20 points. Okay, so you should be focusing on improving it in the area where it is easiest to improve, right? You got that inference? How many of you understood that? Let's say a quick yes, no on this. Again, these are advanced strategies. I'm trying my best to explain this. We have very short time, so I'm trying to condense everything in that. So if you understood this, say a yes. If you don't understand this, say a no, and you can feel free to ask a question. I'm more than happy to take it up. But just to repeat, what I'm trying to say is that since your total score goes up by 20 points for an increase of every 3 points in a scale score or sectional score, whether it is happening through DI, verbal, or quant, it makes sense for a one to maximize or increase the score in the section where it is easiest to increase the score. Obviously, like, it depends on where you stand as of now as well. Okay, so thank you, Aviral. Thank you, Sriraj, for saying yes, that is clear. If someone is not clear with this, please feel free to ask a question around that. So let's see. I'm just comparing DI and quant here. I can also do comparison with verbal, but again, then the slide will have very less space. So I just chose 2 areas. Now look at DI, for example. Okay, now if you look at DI over here, you see from a 82 to 90. If I want to push my score from here to here, there's a scope of only 7 percentile. It starts at 93 percentile, goes to 100 percentile. So I'll have to push myself so hard. The competition is so tough in DI that if I want to improve my score, there is very less scope over there. I'm already at a 93 percentile if I'm at 82. Every single jump in the points is going to be very, very difficult. But on the other hand, if you look at quant, in quant, 82 in quant is just 76 percentile and 90 in quant is 100 percentile. There is a scope of 24 percentile. So a lot of people are actually, what this percentile tells you is a lot of people are actually maximizing their quant score. And that's how they are getting a high score on the test. And that is something which you need to understand very, very well. If you are good at quant and you are still at 84, 85, that doesn't mean that you have perfected quant. Like if you want to really get to a 700 plus mark, possibly it's in your best interest to kind of go for a 88, 89, 90. Now you might say, Piyush, that's too difficult. I can make very less errors to get there. But yes, percentiles don't lie. Percentiles tell us how many people are able to get there. So it's very easily, clearly evident that a lot more people get to high scores in quant compared to high scores in DI. So me pushing in more effort on DI will not give me as much reward as by me putting in more effort on quant. But obviously, guys, please understand, I'm again giving a disclaimer. This doesn't tell us where you are. So it depends on where you are also. Obviously, if you are at a 77 in DI versus a 84 in quant, you would need to put in effort on DI. That's important. Okay, so I have a question from Slok. Slok says, but GI is given a greater weightage by calculating the final score, so percentile do not show the correct picture. Slok, you're completely wrong. I'm saying this point blank. No section is given additional weightage. The formula of GMAT score calculation is very, very simple. It's this simple. Your overall score in the three sections, if it says you get 80, 80, 80 in all three sections, you get 240. 240 if you get in total, that's equal to 605 on the total score of GMAT. Okay, doesn't matter how you get to 240. If your DI is, let's say, instead of 80, if your DI is 70 and you get 90 in quant, again, I'm just taking a random example, right, guys? I'm not saying this is humanly possible, but if you get to that score also, you still get a 240, you still get a 605. Okay, Shlok? And this is how it works. This is how the GMAT scoring works. I've looked at thousands of scorecards, guys, thousands of scorecards. And if you want to get to a 705, the formula is very simple. You get a 85, 85, 85, or like basically that's equivalent to a total score. You get 255, that's 705. So every 3-point jump increases your score by 20 points overall. Okay, so if your score goes up by 15 points, that's 3 into 5, your total score goes up by 20 into 500 points. So there is no additional weightage to any section. And that's the beauty of GMAT Focus. In GMAT Classic, that used to be a different story. In GMAT Classic, a single point improvement in quant, in the higher score bands, improved your score by 20 points, but in single point improvement in verbal, improved by 10 points. Here, it is very different. It's very transparent in terms of scoring overall. So quant should be perfected, guys. It's very important for you to do well on this. Now, you also need to keep in mind a lot of other things when you're doing your root cause analysis. And to this content, I would like to quote a very recent interview that was taken up by GMAT Club, and GMAT Club is doing some amazing job in bringing some of the great discussions. They brought someone from GMAT who is a senior psychometrician behind the scoring algorithm. And she was talking about how the algorithm is designed. Most of the things were aware, but obviously one thing that I really liked, she was saying that the GMAT test is truly designed to test your readiness for an MBA program. Like how do you work under pressure? How do you tackle difficult situations? A lot of those things are also trying, and like they're trying to test that also through the GMAT questions. Now, a lot of people don't understand this. They think, okay, you know what is GMAT really testing me? They're testing you on DI, verbal, and quant. So if I know my concepts in quant, I know my concepts in verbal, I know my concepts in DI, I work on the process, I do those two things, basically, I get the high score. But what you need to understand is that there are three barriers in GMAT. First one is conceptual knowledge. Conceptual knowledge will take you to a score of 575 to 595 maximum. Once you add the right processes on top of it, you will get to the score of, let's say, 625, 645, around that range. And the third barrier is the skills that you need to get to a 705 plus. Again, it is not just skills, but a lot of more improvement in the process also that is required. But skills take more weightage over there. Now, what are these skills that I'm talking about? What is this process? What is the skills? Don't worry about it, guys. I know this might seem like jargons for you, but I'm going to give you real examples with real questions, not just high level information. I'm going to show you real questions and show you how GMAT tests you on those things. Okay, we'll learn that. Just stay with me. It's going to be a long session, but you'll love it. I'm sure you'll learn a lot from today's session. I'm 100% sure. So what are the skills that you need to get to that 675 plus or 705 plus? One of them, very critical skills, exam awareness. Like I remember one of my students, Keshav, who worked with me, got a 705 in about 30 days time, got into Yale, got into Ross with scholarships. This guy told in his interview that he treated GMAT like a test, like a game, GMAT test like a game. Like when you are in Call of Duty or you're playing any other game, You are aware of your environment. You are aware of other things around you. You are not giving control to others. You are in control. That is something which is very, very critical. I'll show you with examples. Don't worry, guys. I'm going to give you examples of what I mean by that. It tests your strategizing skills, because as a future manager, you would not be taking decisions just by impulse. You would need to think before you decide, and you need to strategize. And GMAT is trying to test that. I'll prove that to you with questions also. I'll show that to you with questions. It tests how critically can you relate things to real scenarios. It tests your meticulous reading. It tests your working under pressure also. Now, obviously, I would want to cover all of this. I would want to cover all the skills, but yes, we have limited time. I can't cover everything today. So I'm going to prioritize a few skills, going to talk about them, but the others are equally important, guys. Don't think that if I've not talked about them, they don't matter. They matter a lot, especially if you focus on this relating to real scenario skills. This, if you apply in your word problem questions in Quant, which is, by the way, as I said, can help you get to the score, highest possible score, because of the GMAT scoring the way it works. If you apply this on word problems in Quant, which accounts for about 50 to 60% of the questions in the Quant section, this can actually work wonders for you. That's a very critical skill. But again, I'll not be talking a lot about that and some of the other things also. But let's focus on the first skill. Let's focus on exam awareness. And there's nothing better than doing a question. So let's do this question. It's an official question. Credits to GMAT. This is not our question. This is an official question. I've only given this for a learning. Okay, guys? So you have 2 minutes. I'm going to go full screen so that you can focus on the question. Don't type your answers in the chat. Just hold on to your answers. I'll tell you when to type. Okay? You have 1.5 to 2 minutes to solve this. All the best, guys. And please don't type your answers. Okay, Sanjay, you have posted the answer. I properly said, please don't post the answers. Let others also solve. I'll give another 30 seconds, guys. So if you guys have solved it, you can start posting the answers now. Others can solve for another 30 seconds, and then we'll start the discussion. So if you have solved it, please feel free to post your answers now. Okay, so I see 4 responses, another 20 seconds. So unanimous answer. Really good job. I see all of you are in agreement with each other. Thank you, Aviral, Sanjay, Kanan, and Hasib. Anyone with a different answer than this? And again, guys, not a very difficult question if you notice, but there's a very important learning from this. That is very, very critical, guys. Very important learning. And here, all of you have went with D. I'll just come back on the screen for a bit. All of you have went with B. I know many of you would have solved it in a different way, may not have posted your answers because you're not 100% confident. But when I give these questions to solve to students, real-time data says only 30% students get it right in the first go. Most of them solve it in 1 minute and they make a mistake. And the reason why they make a mistake for 99% of the people who make a mistake is this sentence. When I was solving this question for the first time, I saw the question, it said, let k equal to 10 to the power 10. And then I read this. Then k is 1 followed by 10 zeros. Now, when I saw this, I asked myself, why on earth has GMAT given this information to me? If they have given this information to me because I'm not supposed to know this, then I understand. But there are so many GMAT official questions where they test you on this understanding that if you write something as 10 to the power something, 10 to the power x or 10 to the power 2, 3, 4, 5, can you identify how many zeros are there in it? How many digits are there in it, right? Do you guys agree with me? If you agree with me, if you have seen those questions, do say a yes. It's a very important lesson that you learn from this. So when I saw this, I told myself, yeah, this is something which GMAT expects you to know. Then if they expect you to know this and they even test you on this thing in other questions, then why on earth have they given this piece of information? Can anyone tell me why this information is there in this question? Right? Why is this question information there? So Vidur says the answer is C. Can anyone of you tell me? Like before I tell the reason, can anyone of you tell me? Hasib says yes. I've seen these questions where they expect us to know that. Right? Good, Hasib. And if you guys have done sufficient questions, you would have seen that. To confuse, exactly, Ved. That's what GMAT is trying to give you. They are trapping you. They are trying to trap you into thinking incorrectly. And when I see people read this, the second thing that they do is when they see this question, they say the number k to the power k, then the number k to the power k is one followed by how many zeros? Then they just fall back on this and they say, okay, k has 10 zeros because the power here. So k has the power k. So they pick, okay, then the number of zeros should be k, which is 10 to the power 10. So they pick as this as the answer, which is one of the most common answers that people pick. Again, I'm happy that all of you picked, most of you picked the right answer here today. But that's the trick with GMAT plays with you. And they give these questions generally between question number 14 to question number 20 is what I have seen on the test or the mocks, where you're already a little tired or you're rushing a lot and you end up making these careless errors. The second way where a lot of people make these errors is they also choose 100. They think, okay, k has 10 zeros, k to the power k, 10, 10, and then they think of 10 into 10, 100, and that's how they think. The answer is not 100, Hassan. Answer, that's what people pick. The correct answer is D. Now, how is that the answer? Again, this is not a subject matter session. I'm not going too deep into the conceptual knowledge. Obviously, if I had to, I would. But again, that's not my objective. My objective is to teach you the skills that GMAT is testing on. But the core thing here is k to the power k is this. Basically, k raised to the power k, whole thing raised to the power k. It is not this, guys. Please understand. In this, you are only raising this 10 to the power k, which is incorrect. So you have to write it this way. And then I will write it like this using the simple formulas that I know. And then I can say this is that. And my number of zeros is 10 to the power 11. And that's the correct answer. Now, please understand, guys, when I was reading this question, the awareness that I showed was I read this information and I asked myself, why is this given to me? And I understood at that moment itself that this is to just confuse me. And I crossed it off my mind right away. And since I crossed it off my mind, I did not get stuck in the trap that GMAT was laying for me. And this is just one example, guys. I can show you hundreds of questions like this where I've seen such traps. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is you need to have a heightened sense of awareness in the test, okay, which requires you to understand and spot and avoid traps. How do you spot and avoid traps? There are a lot of traps. I'll talk about some of these like common traps. The good thing is that there is a finite number of traps that DMAT sets. That's a good thing. They test you on something similar. If you learn how to train yourself on those things, and again, it's not just about practicing more questions. You have to have an open mindset towards it. So when I work with my students, I train them how to look for these traps. What are the most common traps? How do they avoid these traps? So all this we talk about then. Now, another thing which is important is decision making. You need to understand in which case should you actually go ahead and solve the question, in which case it makes sense to use the options. Again, I'm not taking an example today. The example that I've taken is for the first case. There is other things which is related to decision making where using options could be better. But again, I'll talk about that more in depth as well. But let's understand the role of strategizing. So as I said, the other skill is strategizing. Now let's do another official question for that. So this is another official question, a permutation and combination question, guys. All the best. You have a couple of, I'll give 2.5 minutes. This is a slightly more complicated question, but please, I don't want anyone to respond to the answers in the chat unless I ask you to, okay? So please maintain that because that just helps others to solve it without any biases. Okay, guys? So all the best. You have 2.5 minutes to solve this. Okay, guys, 1 minute is over, but still, please don't type your answers in the chat. It's a humble request. I'll give another 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes. Okay, last 30 seconds, guys. Those who have solved it, you can go ahead and start posting your answers. Feel free to. Okay, so if you've solved it, you can go ahead and post your answers. And again, another official question, credits to GMAT for this. This is an official question again. I just wanted to do this to help you learn the things behind the skills that they're testing you on. Okay, this is a very important learning through this question. Okay, I don't see any responses yet. We'll just wait for another 30 seconds. So Mayank has an answer. Mayank says B. Okay, let's see others. Okay, Srijal says D. Chetna says 448, which is B. Good. Ved says D. Yeah, this is a difficult question, not an easy one. And my point is not about this question. My point is not about whether the right answer is B or D or C or whatever. My point is learning the things that lies behind this question. What is basically GMAT trying to do with this question? Now, let's get started. Thank you guys for all the responses. I see most of you saying B and D. Another person, Kanan, I think Kanan says C, but let's see. So when most of the people see this question, what they try doing is they start thinking, all I have to do this question is, to solve this question is, I have to subtract the number of the numbers that contain digits 2 and 5 from 900, 2 or 5 from 900. So they start thinking, how many numbers contain 2? Again, I'm not saying that's the best approach, guys. Let me tell you, okay, before you start typing in the chat that I know a better method, I know that too. But I'm going to focus more importantly on where you go wrong. You look at this question, you jump into solving it. And the way it is framed, if you see very carefully, it says, how many numbers from 100 to 999? You start thinking, okay, 900 numbers do not contain. So you think of minus. And then you say either contain the digit 2 or 5. You start thinking of contains 2 minus contains 5. But then you realize that you have subtracted the numbers which contains both 2 and 5. So you need to add those numbers. But it doesn't end there. What about numbers which contain 2 twice? What are those numbers which contain 5 twice? I've seen students spending 5 minutes, even 7 minutes on this question and still getting nowhere, getting the wrong answer. And why did that happen? Because they did not strategize. Now let me present you the same question. So important to observe and then solve rather than just solving. Very important skill, guys. Look at this question. I'm going to give you this question now. I want you to focus on the question on the bottom. Give it a thought. Just 1 minute. Okay? All the best, guys. Look at that question. And now you can feel free to answer this question for me. Another 50 seconds or so I'll give. Pawan says 1000. 999 Ved says, okay. Let's see others. Kanan says 448. Okay, Kanan, you got this as 448. I think the second question, right? 448. Good. Aditya says 448. Good. Now, guys, tell me what is the difference between the question on the top and the question on the bottom? Is there a difference at all? If you see this question, this straightforward question, you use filling spaces method. Again, that's a concept of probability permutation combination that we teach. In the first place, I have 7 choices, 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 7 choices to pick from. In the second place, I can pick 8 from 8 choices because 0 is also available now. So 7 into 8 into 8, 448. Again, I'm teaching very quickly because again, the idea is not to teach you this concept. The idea is to teach you something which is very critical. Aviral says both are similar. They are not similar, they are same. They're exactly same questions. But the second one, if I give this question, people will solve this in 40 seconds to 60 seconds flat without any iota of doubt. They'll solve this in 40 to 60 seconds, guys. And the one on the top, I've seen people spend 5 to 7 minutes on that. So is GMAT really testing you on permutation combination through this question? This is the official version of the question. This is the real deal. This is the simplified version that I have just created to help you guys understand. Now tell me, guys, say a yes and no. Do you think through the official version of the question, is GMAT really testing you on PNC? What do you think? Say a yes and no. I would like to see your responses. And that will help me understand how many of you have actually understood what the crux of this entire discussion. I'm trying to spend so much energy on this. I hope you guys have understood what I mean to say. Do you feel that GMAT is testing you on permutation and combination through the first question, the official question? I want to see yes and no. Okay, I hope there's a slight bit of a lag. I'll wait for the responses. So Shiraz says no. I have the first response. Shiraz says no. Very truly. It's not testing you on permutation combination, because if you're not testing you on permutation combination, they would have framed the question in a simplified version. They would have given it to you that way. If you know permutation combination, you'll be able to solve second question. If you don't know it, then you won't be able to. So Sanjay, again, mark my words. If they were testing you on PNC, they would give the simplified version. They are not testing you on PNC only. Obviously, the question is on PNC. It is one part, but they could have given the question in that fashion. Right? So Chetna says, I got a hint from Piyush that is a permutation question and I did it that way. Yes, that's another important point. In a question in GMAT, it doesn't say it's a permutation question. You see this question, you start solving it the other way. You start solving by doing contains 2, contains 5, you subtract it from 900. You go in that direction, you're lost for 5 minutes, 7 minutes. It will go in a whiffy, your entire test will be gone. That's what happens. You need to understand this. GMAT is testing through the official version. They are testing. Can you take a pause before you start solving? Can you observe and then solve? And that's a very, very critical skill. Now, that's something when we work with students, we make them understand this, that, okay, if we feel that you're jumping too soon into solving a question, and again, this is something which we only get to know when we see students. So one example, one of the students, I really like the way she actually changed her entire score. She improved from a 535 to 695 in just a matter of 3 months. And when we were working with her, especially when it came to number properties in algebra, we were seeing that she had a sound understanding. She knew the process. The only reason she was not getting the questions correct was she was not using her brain. She was not strategizing before solving. So what I recommended her was start putting a 30-second timer on your phone after reading the question. So not at the beginning of the test or the question. You read the question first properly, slowly, and then put a 30-second timer on the phone, on your phone, and in that 30 seconds, you're not going to solve the question. In those 30 seconds, you're only going to observe and strategize how you're going to approach this particular question. So your focus is completely on observing and strategizing for those 30 seconds. You're not solving. And this worked wonders for Pragati. She could see the improvement in the score. I'm not saying this was the only reason her score improved, but one of the very, very critical reasons. Now, please understand, guys, I'm not asking all of you to do this. This is very personalized. This is something, if we feel that this is the only reason why a student is struggling, then we recommend that. And it's not like you have to do it in the exact test, right? It is something which you do initially to train your mind to observe. Once your mind gets trained, you might not need to do it. And as I said, I don't recommend this to all my students, maybe 10% of the people where I feel that there's a lack of strategizing. Okay. In case you want to check out Pragati's interview, the link I have given in the chat, you can feel free to do that. But yes, there's a lot of these things that play a role. So if you don't understand the role of strategizing, if you don't work on it, no matter how many questions you solve, no matter what you do, you'll not be able to improve your score. So the root cause identification, the right root cause is very, very, very critical. Okay. So we do our best when we work with students to help them understand this. And obviously, you need to do your best to identify those things. I'm going to help you understand the sum of these things. And then it's your job to make sure that you identify exactly what's going on. But in case you need help from GMATWhiz and you're exploring options and you want to work with us to help you with your GMAT score, feel free to schedule a call in my calendar. This is the link. You can go ahead, schedule a call. I'm more than happy to connect with you, help you understand how we can help you bridge the gap and get you to the target score. Okay. Now let's focus on the next important thing, the kind of patterns and traps. So again, I cannot cover all questions. This will become a quant session, obviously. But yeah, there are a lot of patterns and traps that are very important and very common in GMAT. And I'm not going to talk about only quant traps. One of the most critical traps that I see is understanding what is unnecessary information in the question. And not just for quant, even for verbal. In fact, it's more important for verbal. Correct identification of the scope of the question. A lot of the answers that are there are not within the scope. But if you don't understand the scope, then it is not basically like gonna be the right thing. You'll not be able to get the answers correct. Similarly, simplifying overcomplicated text in the question stem, not just for verbal, even for quant for that matter. I've seen some official questions which are unnecessarily complicated. The language is super complex. If you spend like 10, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, or 30 seconds thinking about that, that depends on question to question. You'll be able to simplify it to such a simple question that you can solve it in another 30, 40 seconds. But if you don't simplify it, you might be stuck on the question for 4 or 5 minutes as well. Okay. Similarly, replacing variable with numbers and numbers with variables. And this part is interesting, guys. A lot of people think that replacing variables with numbers is what can make my life easy. But sometimes replacing numbers with variables is also important to ease out the process. Similarly, paying attention to quantifiers like sum, all, none, etc. Taking a call when to use the options and calculations get more tricky. And there are many, many more of this. But the good thing is that there is a set limitation, like there are certain set things, certain set traps that GMAT tests you on. And some of these traps are more critical than the others. And if you train yourself on those traps, if you observe those things, if you do those observations and train yourself to do that, you are poised to get a 705 plus kind of a score. Okay. The next thing, which is very important, is also importance of learning smarter methods. Because see, what will happen in the real test is, if you see the scorecard of high scorers, like if you look at the scorecard of the student who has scored a 87 in quant, he has also spent a lot of time on a couple of questions. But why he was able to still get a high score? Because he was able to do a lot of questions in that 1 minute time frame. Same for DI for the student. She spent so much time on the initial questions in DI. But why was she able to work on that? And this is where Kanan, you've asked the question at the very right time. Kanan is asking how to tackle careless mistakes. Kanan, again, it's all about root cause analysis. Understand, why do you make these careless mistakes or silly mistakes? The reason why people make the careless mistakes or silly mistakes is because they're rushing. Okay, that's the root cause. Root cause is rushing. But understand, you cannot solve the rushing problem just like that. If I ask you to tell you that, okay, don't rush, that just doesn't work. You have possibly told that to yourself so many times. You need to understand, why do you need to rush? The reason you are needing to rush, you're requiring to rush in the test, is because when you actually take a lot of time in hard questions, you know that you're not able to finish the test because of that. So you need to cut corners somewhere. You need to cut time somewhere. And what most people do is, for them, the only solution to cut time is actually by cutting corners, by rushing. But what you fail to realize is, if you use smarter methods, to solve questions, you might as well be able to do many of these questions in this range, which will free up a lot of your time that can be then used to solve the harder questions, and that can be used to keep yourself calm, that can be used to not rush, and that will solve a lot of your problems. So very important, Kanan, right question at the right time, I would say, bang on. How do you tackle careless mistakes? You need to understand why you are rushing. If you're rushing because of time, which is the case with 99% of the cases, you need to learn smarter methods to improve on that. Now, I'm going to teach one smart method. Again, I don't think I'll be able to go too deep into it. I'll just try to cover it at a slightly faster pace because we are already at 50 minutes. I wanted to keep it a not a very long session. So I'm giving you a disclaimer. The methods that are going to be covered will be covered at a fast pace since this is not a subject matter discussion. Okay. So let's solve this question. This is a data sufficiency question. I want you guys to try it for a minute. Okay. I'm going to give you a minute and then I'm going to solve it at light speed. But yes, I'll still try to be uh, so slow that I am able to explain it properly to you guys. But please pardon me in advance. 1 minute is what you have, guys. All the best. Okay, another 10 seconds maybe. All right, guys. So let's do this now. Now, many of you could have solved this using the regular method of taking different cases for x, y, and z, right? X is even, y is even, z is even, whatever. But I'll teach you something very interesting, a very interesting way to look at the even odd concept. So one rule which many of you might know that even raised to any integer, power of any integer, or odd raised to power of any integer will lead us to even and odd integers respectively. So the power doesn't matter. But another interesting thing that is important to understand is that x plus 2 is same nature as x is. See, if you are only talking about the even odd nature, x plus 2's nature is same as x plus 4. It's same as x plus 6 because eventually I'm just adding an even number to x. So if I'm adding an even number to x, it doesn't really matter which even number I add. Again, disclaimer, if we are only focused on the even odd nature of the final expression, all these three expressions will have the same even odd nature. So if that is the case, I should write all of them as x plus 0, which is x. Similarly, if I'm writing x plus 7, it's going to have the same nature as x plus 5, which is going to have the same nature as x plus 3, which is going to have the same nature as x plus 1, because I'm just adding an odd number to x. So if I'm only worried about the even odd nature of the final expression, I can just replace x plus 7 with x plus 1. And in the same, using the same logic, if I'm multiplying 5 with x, it doesn't matter whether I multiply 5, whether I multiply 3, whether I multiply 7. Till the moment I'm multiplying an odd number, I'm going to get the same result. So I can just replace it as 1x. And same I can do with even. So what I'm simplifying is that if the question only cares about the even odd nature of the expression, then I can replace all odd numbers with 1 and replace all even numbers with 0 if they are in addition, subtraction, or multiplication form. Okay? With that understanding clear, let's simplify this question. Let's understand. Again, I gave it a disclaimer. I'm teaching at a fast pace because this is not a subject matter session, but I want you to understand the importance of smarter methods. Okay? So what I can write is, I can write this expression as 3x. I can just replace 3 with 1, so it will become x. I can replace 5 with 1 again, so it will become y, and z will remain z. And again, the plus minus doesn't matter. X minus y is even. X plus y will also be even. So the question is asking me, is x plus y plus z even? And if that is what the question is asking me, if you see statement 1, it is telling me that I can replace 3 with 1. It says x plus y plus z is even, so sufficient. Second statement, it says x minus y plus z is even, which is same as x plus y plus z because plus minus doesn't matter. So this is also telling me x plus y plus z is even. I don't need to take a single case, and I know both these statements individually are sufficient. Each of the statements are sufficient, so the answer is going to be D in this particular case. See how simple it became to answer this question. And not just this one, guys. Even this question for that matter. It's a very tricky question, very big question, big expressions, all of that. You can solve this question in 30 seconds, maximum 50 seconds by using this concept. It becomes so very simple. And if you don't use this concept, you use any other concept in the world, it's going to take you at least 2.5, 3 minutes, even if you're a quant pro. Okay. Again, I'm not solving this question right now. You can take this as homework, solve it, and obviously post your answers in the comment later. We'll look at it. If we find the answers are great, we'll give you a thumbs up and take it up. But yes, very simple thing. All you need to do is replace all even numbers with 0. So I can replace this with 0, say x plus 0. Power, since it is positive integer, I can just, I know positive integer greater than 2. This is a positive integer x minus 2. I can ignore it. I can ignore this power. I can ignore this power. And this will end up becoming something like this. So the question is asking me, is x into x plus y even, which is same as x times 1 plus y even. So it is asking me, is this even? That means if I know x is even or I know y is odd, any one of them I know, that is sufficient to answer the question. That's just your clue. But if you use that approach on the statements, you will be there to the answer in about 20-30 seconds more. Okay, so that's what I mean by simpler methods. Okay, you need to learn these better methods, and these are not shortcuts. These are legit mathematical methods which work across the board. The only thing you have to keep in mind is that you're only worried about the even odd nature of the expression. That's it. So if you understand the logic behind it, if you understand that, you can apply these methods. And there are so many of these methods for compound interest, for divisibility, for probability, for sets, for inequalities, for percentages. And when we work with students, and they learn this method, they are awestruck as to how much time they could save in those questions. And that's what will eventually help you in actually getting more time, giving more time to other questions. But how do you know you have process gaps? So again, coming back to the root cause analysis, what are the typical markers of process gaps? So generally, when we work with students and we do tutoring with them, we look at them solving questions in real time in the sessions also that we do. And then when they are solving the questions, we look at them, ask them to read out loud so that we can notice their process. So obviously the qualitative analysis is the best analysis. Like when we see that, that's the best way to understand what the process gaps are. But there are some quantitative markers which can actually be very easy for you to also check. I'm going to share some of them. So for verbal, I'll focus on verbal, focused on a lot on quant. So I'll focus on verbal. So one of the markers that indicates that you have process gaps in verbal and you need to work on the process gaps is if you're stuck in the last two choices, especially in hard or even medium questions for that matter. So if you're stuck in the last two choices, you're not sure which one of the two is the correct answer, then there is a problem with your process of solving verbal questions. On the other hand, if you're taking more than 1 minute in question 2 and question 3 of RC passages, so obviously the first passage you will take more than 1 minute because you need to read the passage. But if you are consistently taking more than 1 minute and it's more around 1.5 minute mark for question 2 and question 3 of the passages, there is a problem with the way you are reading and solving RC questions. Similarly, in CR, if you are taking more than 1 minute on answer choice elimination, like when you go to the answer choices, you read the answer choices, you're taking more than 1 minute on that. You're doing a lot of back and forth between the question stem and the answer choice, the argument and the answer choice. That's a clear indication there's a process gap in verbal and you need to fix it. And you need to learn the right process gaps. I'll tell you how to fix it also. Obviously, that is also covered in the session today. In quant, I've already talked about most of the skills that you need to work on. Some of them I've already talked about. But another marker that I look at is if your time on an average in word problem questions is more than 2 minutes. If it is more than 2 minutes, then your processes, I'm not saying it's wrong, but you're not using smarter methods. Because if you learn smarter methods, you can solve on an average all word problem questions in the entire test under 2 minutes. And word problems, as I said, is the most critical question type in quant, that is. Now in DI, if you're spending more than quarter to 2 minutes on data sufficiency on an average, that's a problem. Similarly, in MSR, if you're spending more than 2 minutes on question 3 and question 2 and question 3 of MSR, or you're doing a lot of rereading, a little bit of rereading is fine to confirm the answer. But to understand if you're doing a lot of rereading, that's a problem. Similarly, in TPA or two-part analysis, if you're relying too heavily on the option choices to find the answer, that's another indicator of process gaps. Okay. So understand, I'm not talking about learning shortcuts, I'm talking about learning the right methods. Okay. So I hope you guys have a decent idea about what all you need to do in order to improve your score. But just to put things into perspective, I'll take a case study to help you understand the root cause analysis, how it is supposed to be done, and how do you create an action plan based on that. So again, remember Einstein's quote, important to do focus on root cause analysis. So let's talk about a student of ours we're working with currently. He has been preparing for 8 months. He studied with 6 months with a renowned course, very renowned course on GMAT Club, one of the most reviewed course out there, and then 2 months of self-study. And in his GMAT latest attempt, he scored a 635 with a Quant 84, Verbal 83, and DI 77. Obviously, when you look at this, most of you would think that DI is the weakest lot, and doing additional practice on hard questions in DI and time test is what is required. And most of the students think in that way that, okay, DI is where the work is needed. But when we did the root cause analysis for DI, we found other problems and which were not related to technically DI. So we saw that there is a decent amount of process improvement required in data sufficiency and two-part analysis. And let me help you understand how we looked at this so that you get an idea as to how you should look at data sufficiency, for example, how you can look at that. So when we looked at data sufficiency, what we saw was that first of all, the indicator that we looked at from his scorecard was that his time and data sufficiency was generally higher. Now, that was an indicator that told us that there is some problem with DS, but we had to delve deeper. So we did discussions with him, and we saw that he was solving a lot of questions mathematically. He was literally writing down the entire equations, entire expressions, and then solving it from there, literally solving and finding the answers. Now, when we dug deeper, we found the reason why he had to do that was he lacked conceptual clarity of the underlying concepts. He felt very insecure that if I use logic to solve DS questions, I might as well miss out on an edge case or something. And because of that lack of conceptual clarity, he was actually putting time to solve it mathematically. The reason for that, the outcome of that was his time taken in DS was around 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes on an average. Okay. So the impact of it was he needed to rush in other questions to make up for that time. Now, if you notice the root cause here is conceptual clarity of underlying concepts. So working on DI is not going to help him. He has to work on DS, but he has to also work on the underlying concepts in Quant. And please understand, when I say conceptual clarity, I'm not talking about conceptual understanding. Please understand, guys, there's a difference between you knowing the concepts and formulas. In DS, difference between you knowing the concepts and formulas versus you understanding it logically. In DS, if you understand concepts logically, how they work the way they work, if you have an advanced understanding of the concepts, most of the questions you can solve by logic. You don't have to do the math. You just have to say, I'm not saying you have to cut corners and do wild guesses. That's wrong, guys. I'm not promoting that at all. I'm promoting that if you have conceptual clarity and you do the right amount of work, you will be able to read a question, understand what kind of data is required to solve. And sometimes you might have to write equations also. I'm not saying I'm against writing equations. It is important to do that unless you feel 100% confident. But sometimes you'll be able to write equations, but you would know that in the next 2 or 3 steps, these things will happen and which will give me the result that I require. So when we looked at this, we told him that you need to strengthen your logical understanding of the concepts. And a part of it is to work on your quant logic, but a part of it is also to solve data sufficiency questions using logical reasoning and then doing question review. When you do the question review, you sit on the questions, you see why, if you made a mistake, why you needed to think extra in that case, or what is the edge case that you missed. Note down those edge cases properly, make a proper error log for yourself and review those cases every 7 to 8 days so that you remember them. Take screenshots of the important questions. That is something you need to do. He was not even putting in the effort in that direction. Now imagine, even if he puts in, if he thought, okay, I want to go and work on DI, and he worked on data sufficiency without working on these process, he would have not improved because he was doing that for 8 months. Okay. Now Pawan says what to do if you know all the logics but keep forgetting them when you need them. So Pawan, logic is something you don't forget. It's not a rule. It's not a formula. Logic is the reasoning behind things. And if you know the reasoning behind things, you won't forget it ever. Right? If you understand the reason why things work in the way they work, you'll never forget them. If you're forgetting, the sign it's a typical sign of you not knowing why it is working the way it is working. And I'm talking about advanced concepts. Okay, if it is happening with you a lot. So please work on that. That's important to understand the reasoning behind the logic. Okay. Now, in two-part analysis, what we saw was that because of obviously DS induced stress, and why, one more thing which is important is DS is the most critical topic in DI. Not just because that it accounts for 7 to 8 questions in DI, which is the maximum number of questions that you get from a topic. It is also very critical because if you want to really do well on DI and you need to save time, you can save time only from DS. That naturally saves you time. So it's a very critical area. Now, because of his time, extra time in DS, it was putting stress on two-part analysis, where he was reading in a rushed fashion, doing questions in under 3 minutes unnecessarily, where he had to spend that time. Because of that, he was unable to draw relevant inferences, and then he was relying on options to solve the question, and the impact was inconsistent performance and low confidence on TPA. But when we sorted out DS, he got more time. He was able to even spend more time on TPA, and he started understanding how to. We taught him how to draw the inferences as well. Okay, that's important. And then we said, okay, now based on your current scores, definitely the target scores that we should set for ourselves is there is a decent amount of scope in quant. You are good at quant, but there is a decent amount of scope for improvement in quant and DI and other areas. So this is what we have set as our targets. Again, not just because again this might seems too egregious to you, too aggressive for you, but again when we set targets for students, we take into account their capabilities, potential, based on what we have seen with other similar students in the past where they could get to. So that's where our target is. So very clear that we have to put in our effort on quant. And what we are doing right now is, again, the idea is that we put about 60% of effort on quant, around 30% effort on verbal, sorry, DI, and around 10% effort on verbal. Approximately, I'm saying this is what we decided, because a lot of the quant improvement will also help him in his DI improvement, because it is based, data sufficiency was one of the things that he was having a lot of issues with. So just working on DI is not going to help. He has to work on the underlying concepts in quant and build the advanced strategy. Okay. I hope you guys understood what I'm talking about here. All of that is clear. So just giving you a clue of the root cause analysis for quant. We looked at word problem methods were not advanced. A lot of extra time he was spending on general word problems, and permutation and combinations were average. Now, how did we do that? Then again, you can also do this by taking sectional tests. You can take sectional tests for yourself and take a look at the concepts or topics, whatever you want to call it, where your score is less than 60% consistently. That's possibly the area where you have conceptual gaps, where you need to work on the concepts. That's something which is very, very critical. Okay. And when you do the sectional test, do a good mix of easy, medium, and hard questions. So if you see a consistent weakness in a particular topic where you're getting less than 60% score, that's most likely a concept issue. So that is what we found in his case was the case with permutation, combination, and probability. Then we found that in word problems, his general time taken was on a higher side. As I said, more than 2 minutes on general word problems he was taking, because his methods were not advanced. It was not like his methods were not good. He was doing everything mathematically, but advanced methods we focused on then. That helped him improve his word problems, and that was the weakest area of the lot. Now in algebra, we found that absolute value, sequence, and series, and max min questions were creating trouble. So we asked him to focus on these 3 areas, because other areas he was doing a very good job at. Similarly, in number properties, we found rounding and estimation and must be true questions creating trouble. Okay, so this is how you need to go deeper and understand what your root causes are and work on these root causes. And when you work on these root causes, you have to take the skills into account as well. Okay, so in order to create an action plan, you need to focus on knowledge, you need to focus on skill, and you need to focus on execution, all 3 things. So when I say knowledge, it includes both the things, concepts plus process. So then you need to develop those skills that I talked about. And which skills am I talking about? I'm talking about these skills that I talked about, right? So you have to ensure that you use all these skills. You prepare yourself in a way that you get the skills imbibed in you. You focus on developing the skills if you're weak at any one of them or multiple of them. And then you need to also ensure that you execute on the day of the test. Okay, so I'll focus on how do you build the knowledge, how do you build the process skills and concept skills right now. But yes, the action plan creation is a very personalized thing. Every person is very unique. When we create an action plan for them, we look at the time available with them, we look at their target score, we look at what kind of material they have used till now for prep, we look at their strengths and weaknesses, we look at the methods that they use and their learning style. So obviously the action plan is very personalized. I'll try and help you understand how you can create a general action plan for yourself. What are the key things that you need to keep in mind? But in case you need a discussion on the action plan and you want to understand how GMATWhiz can help you, you can feel free to go ahead and schedule a discussion on my calendar. if you want to understand how our team can help you create the action plan and get to the target score, how we can work together and get you there, feel free to do that. But I'll give you a good action idea as to what can be done in general to improve the scores. So you need to work on different things differently. So let's say if you have a concept specific improvement, again, I've told you already how to identify concept specific gaps. Okay, those of you who are just joined or just watching it, remember a few slides back, I told you that you take sectional test and see in which concepts or topics your score is less than 60% consistently. That's where you have concept specific improvements. So what you do for them is you review the concept, cover the concept gaps. Like if you whatever material you're using, if you're using GMATWhiz, go through the video lessons, understand the concepts, cover the concept gaps first. And then what is second step you need to do is you need to solve 5 to 10 questions and focus on process of solving. Like don't do questions in a hurry or in a bunch. Do 1 or 2 questions, 3, 4 questions, maybe maximum at one time, and review the solution. See the process of solving closely so that you understand what is that you're doing wrong. And then you can start doing questions, 20, 30 questions in sets of 10 questions at a time to improve your confidence in them. So this is generally the low hanging fruits. If you understand and work on these low hanging fruits, you can improve, obviously. Like, and a lot of people like work on this part. And if you get the right conceptual understanding, this will actually give you the fastest result. Now, how do you work on module specific issues? So you have to then learn the right processes. Again, there are different processes required for different question types. I've written some of these processes on the screen, but yes, this is something which we teach in our students. We also do sessions. Sunita ma'am does session. You can go to GMATWhiz YouTube channel, or you can just subscribe to our email list. You'll get the links for some of the webinars also that we conduct. We try to talk about the different processes, and obviously each of them has to be done in depth. You have to learn the process. But how do you learn the process? First step is understand the method. Obviously, you can, if you're a GMAT student, you'll get to learn that from the platform itself. You can attend our webinars. Obviously, over there, we cover it in a very slightly fast format, but in-depth is covered in our course. So you learn the process. Then you solve 15 questions one at a time. Important to do one at a time. And then you try to review the explanations and avoid deviations from the method. Okay. So that is something which is important. But if you think timing is an issue, again, remember, timing is not an issue. It is either because of conceptual gaps or process gaps, or thinking about timing too soon. It's not imbibing the process correctly. So the key idea is that if you're in this final stage of fine tuning, if you are there, again, if you're not there yet, please make sure that you work on the basics before that. But if you're in this final stage, spend 60 to 70% of your time solely focusing on your weak areas. Don't just do random practice. That's not going to help you. You need to do focused work on your weak areas first. A lot of people go with this mindset that every week I should take a mock. Don't do that, guys. Mocks won't magically improve your scores. And there are so limited good quality mocks that are there. So don't waste the mocks either. Please make sure that you first work on 60-70% of your time on weak areas solely, and divide the rest of the time in general practice and revision. Sometimes revision is also important. Go through your notes, revise those things, work on that. Don't just work on the weak areas. 30-40% of the time should go to that. Maybe you have to take sectional tests also. Okay. Now, if you do that, then you're getting ready with the skills, like the knowledge that you need. Skills, obviously, you have to train yourself on depending on what skills you are weak at and where you're weak at it. Then comes the execution on your D-Day. So execution on your D-Day is very critical. It ensures that you perform to your 100% potential. It just ensures that you get there on the actual day when it matters. So I'll share some do's and don'ts. One of the very important things which actually affects your performance is taking too many mocks close to the test. I've seen so many students making this mistake. They feel that I am different. I am someone who works better with practice. Trust me, 99 out of 100 people think that if they do more practice, they are in the zone, they do better. And in that, it doesn't mean that you will start taking a lot of mocks. A lot of people do 1 mock every day leading up to their test. Sometimes people do 2 mock every day, like 2 mocks also in a day, or maybe 1 mock every 2 days. Don't overdo the mocks. The problem with overdoing the mocks is you're cluttering your mind so much so on just doing questions and questions. You're not leaving yourself enough time for review. And you understand you don't improve by doing more questions. You improve by reviewing the solutions. And that's a key thing that you'll hear every successful student saying. Okay, those who say that, okay, just take too many mocks, I don't know. If it worked for them, great. But in many cases, it might be just brilliant. Like if you are an average student, if you're struggling to improve your score, taking too many mocks is not going to help you. It is only going to put performance pressure on you, which will create problems. Don't keep a target of questions, number of questions. I get this question asked by a lot of students who tell me, Piyush, how many questions should I solve every day? There is no right answer to this. And even that should not be a thought process. A lot of people think if I do 30 questions every day, 10 for quant, 10 for verbal, 10 for DI, that will make me win the GMAT, get a high score. No, guys. Understand, you learn from the solutions. So even if you need to do lesser questions, spend more time on reviewing. Don't target higher questions. Quality is more important than quantity, and learn from each question that you solve. There are some great questions, like the questions that I showed you. I just showed you two of those official questions. There are so many of them where there's such great learnings. Imagine if you don't spend the time to review them so closely, if you don't spend the time understanding them so closely, there is no way you can develop those skills that I talked about. The only way to do that is reviewing them closely, or an experts basically help you in understanding what are the traps that are there. Obviously we try to do that with our students, but idea is that you need to spend that time on reviewing. That's very critical. And don't increase your study time close to the GMAT. If you don't want, one thing that you don't want to do on the test is don't burn yourself out before the test. You need to have high energy on the test day. Trust me, guys, we have in many cases recommended people to study less closer to their test, and it has worked better than increasing the time for study has. So it always gives you a better result. You need your mind to work, because as I said, GMAT is not only testing you on quant, verbal, and DI. There are so many other things: your exam awareness, your decision making, performing under pressure. All of that is tested. And again, I have not talked about the algorithm and all of that in DI. There are so many things. There are so many strategies. There are so many calls that you need to take at that right moment. I've done another video on timing strategy on GMAT Club YouTube channel. You'll find that, watch that out. There are some great insights I've talked about on data insights, spacing on that. And again, I'm doing a webinar on GMATWhiz in our on our platform. You can subscribe to our email list. Just send a mail to support@GMATWhiz.com. I'm doing a webinar on the next weekend, on next Sunday at 7 p.m. IST. Which is 1:30 p.m. GMT, on the same topic again. I'm talking about the GMAT pacing strategies. So if you really want your brain to function, don't increase your study time close to the GMAT. That's a very big no. What should you do then? You should focus on meditation daily. If you struggle with execution, if you take pressure during the test, if you are generally anxious during the test, this is something which has worked wonders. I'm working with a lot of students right now. One of the students, he was actually really rushing into solving questions. He was almost making silly mistakes in every question, even 2-3 mistakes in every question. I asked him to meditate daily, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening. Initially, he was not doing it. Now he started doing it, and I can see the results. His mistakes have reduced by 70%, silly mistakes. So meditating daily is very critical. That worked wonders for Ria also. Ria is one of our students who improved from 6:15 to 7:15 in just 15 days. I'll talk more about her as well. Take mock tests around the test slot. Don't take the mock test at any random time of the day. Do it around the same time when you're having your test. And also, if possible, don't delay your applications for late. Okay, don't think I'll do things sequentially. I'll first complete GMAT and then work on my applications. If your applications are open, start doing the research on that. Because please understand, what happens with GMAT is, if you're only doing GMAT, you feel stuck if your score is not moving up. You think that I'm not able to move forward to my MBA goal. That's your real goal. Your real goal is not to get a high score on GMAT. Your real goal is to get into the B school. So if you work on your essays and your application, what happens is that you feel that you're moving forward. You actually are working towards moving forward. And when you really work on moving forward, that gives you that peace of mind that helps you to stay more focused, that helps you to give more effort on the GMAT as well. And that's a very, very important thing. A lot of people might not realize this, but we work with a lot of people and we have seen the impact of this positively on students, basically. So I'll take some examples from Ria's journey. She improved from 5:15 to 6:15 and then to 7:15. And the last jump happened in just 15 days. And in the 5:15 to 6:15, it was focus upskilling, the skills that I talked about. But in the last score improvement in the 15 days, it was all about the mindset. It's all about the execution. And how she worked on it was, we taught her how she can use better methods. We talked about how to standardize the method of solving. It was not like she was not knowing the process. It was like she knew the process for solving verbal questions, but she was not using it in a standardized way. In some questions, she was doing something. In some questions, she was doing something else. We made her focus on that in the next 15 days, you have to ensure that no matter what happens, you solve every CR question in this fashion, every RC question in this fashion. Then we asked her to work on her self-belief by stopping rechecking. Like, she was rechecking every answer, especially in quant and DI, almost spending about 20 to 30 seconds on an average on every question altogether, which was not just wasting a lot of time, but it was also creating self-doubt in her. Then we also asked her to start meditating and taking pressure on the test day. And that was something which helped her get to the target score, guys. And I would recommend you to definitely watch her interview in case you want to get some real inspiration of how, if you are really stuck with GMAT, you can still get a high score in a very short span of time if you just work on the right things. It's a very inspirational interview. It will really definitely inspire you to do watch it whenever you are free. I've given the link here. Okay, so I hope guys you've got a good idea about how to improve your score, what are the things that you need to work on to get there. But if you have any questions now, I'm opening it up for an open-ended Q&A, guys. Please feel free to ask me any questions that you have, not just related to this, but any other questions you have. I'm more than happy to take it up. I'm gonna be here with you another 5-7 minutes, whatever it takes to answer the most important questions. But in case you want to reach out to us, you have my email ID, even my WhatsApp number on the screen. And I'm also going to give you the link to schedule a call in my calendar if you want to understand how we can work together and possibly get you to the dream score, and maybe you feature as our next successful student in the next interview. Feel free to reach out to me. You might have to wait a bit to schedule, get the right slots on my calendar because I have very limited slots. But feel free to use this link to schedule a call. That would be ideally the best way to reach out to me. But yes, if you want to reach out on an email, you don't see your suitable slot or on WhatsApp, feel free to do that. Okay, guys, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them up. Okay, I don't see any questions as of now, but I hope the session was really helpful. It gave you some great insights. I've tried to kind of, so there's so much in my head with all that I've seen with so many students. I tried to do my best over this weekend to summarize everything or whatever I've learned about the GMAT focus in the last 1.5 years. Obviously, I've been teaching for 10 years now. So there's a great amount of understanding that I've generated about GMAT in general, but I've also focused specifically on GMAT focus, the things that have changed, where they are focusing now, what they're testing, and I've tried my best to do that. I hope the session was helpful to all of you. And if it was helpful, do give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It will be great. In the meantime, I'll take up your questions. I see a question from Ritika. Best sequence to solve, which section first and which section later? How to decide best based on your strengths and algorithm? So Ritika, that's a very difficult question to answer. It actually depends on your strengths and weaknesses. But the sequence that I like the most is verbal, then quant, then DI. And the break between quant and DI, but again, I'm not saying this is the only sequence that you should try. The right strategy is you try multiple sequences in different mocks and try and analyze properly which sequence works best for you. Okay. The reason I prefer this strategy is strategy is recommended for people who are weak in verbal, especially weakest section is verbal, because when you start the test, you have the maximum amount of focus and energy and attention. And if you start with verbal first, you will be able to devote that energy and attention to verbal and do well in that section. And the problem with starting with quant is if you start with quant, in quant, you do a lot of calculations. So after quant, your mind will be a little confused. So right away, focusing on verbal text might be difficult for you. Again, a disclaimer, guys, I'm not saying one size fits all. This is a general thought process that I feel and I share with students. And obviously, I recommend some of my students. One of my students is taking the test just day after tomorrow. I've recommended him to do quant first, verbal, then and then DI. Again, in some cases, I asked to do DI in between also, just to be clear. So it's very personal. But the reason I say this is because of that, and then take a break and then do DI in the end. Okay. Now, a lot of people think that GMAT is section adaptive and all of that. I know there are rumors going around on Reddit and a lot of places around it, a lot of social media platforms. But we have looked at thousands of scorecards. There is no conclusive evidence to prove that GMAT is section adaptive. And GMAT officials have not given any official comment on that. And I don't see a reason why they would not give an official comment, especially when they have very clearly said for executive assessment, which is another test that GMAT conducts, that it is section adaptive. So why would they not say that for GMAT, which is their main test? I don't see a reason for that. So there is no evidence to prove that it's section adaptive. If you come up with an evidence to show me that, I can give you counter evidence to show you it is not, basically. So there's no evidence to prove or disprove it. So I would not recommend you to go with that mindset. And also understand that if you go with the mindset that, okay, I start with a stronger section first and maximize the score. If it is section adaptive, I'll get higher value questions. Please understand that when you are going into your weaker section, if you start with higher value questions, your possibility of getting them right is also lower. So you might as well mess up the entire weaker section. Again, I'm not saying that's the only way you need to look at it. There are multiple perspectives. There's a long discussion that we can go on this. But yes, long story short, Ritika, the best thing to do is try different strategies and see which one works best for you. Do review, detailed review of that. Okay, Kanan says, I get confused by the wordings in DI and that eats up a lot of my time. I don't face time pressure in verbal and quant, but in DI, I get time pressure. So again, in DI, if you're getting confused by the wordings, if the wordings are confusing, it requires your time. What happens in DI, a lot of people with is Kanan is that they cut corners on reading the question stem and then they get confused and they read the question stem again. Eventually, they end up spending the same amount of time or more time, but instead of that, if you read it in one go properly, you will automatically get the best possible understanding out of it. And the second thing with DI is that in DI, you don't really need to solve all 20 questions. Even 14, 15 questions, maximum 16 questions, if you do, you will get a great score. And I've covered that in another session on timing strategy that I've taken. You can check out the video of that. It is easily available on GMAT Club YouTube channel itself. Otherwise, you can attend the session next week. I'm taking a timing specific strategy session, pacing strategy, focus strategy session. You can just mail support at the rate of GMATWhiz.com and get the link for registration for the same, or on GMAT Club also on event bar, you'll see that link. So just come in, that will show you why I say that, why that works. So if you're performing well, then last section won't be the toughest because that is what people say. So again, Ritika, I told you there is no concrete evidence for that. I've seen so many cases where that's not the case. GMAT has not made an official statement, so I would not recommend you to pivot your strategies keeping the section adaptability in mind. That's the wrong thing to do. Okay, focus on what works best for you and do that. And we have been doing that with all of our students, works out all the time. Okay, Ritika, there's a lot of hearsay you will see in the internet. Not all of it is correct. Okay, great guys. So I don't see any other questions. I hope I was able to do justice to your time, and I tried my best to share whatever learnings I had. And I hope it was a great discussion. You guys got some inputs into it. And obviously, it's difficult to kind of standardize the score improvement because it's a very personal thing and works in different ways for different students. But I've tried my best to give you the best strategies, understand how it works. And obviously, you have to use the strategies to create an action plan out of it yourself. But if you need our help, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy. We work with a lot of students, deliver great results, and you can be a part of it if you want to, obviously. So all the best, guys. Make sure that you implement the strategies, whether you work with us, whether you work on your own, the strategies will get you the target score, that's for sure. So all the best, guys, and I hope all of you get the amazing scores and get into your top B schools that you have aimed for and eventually make me proud. Like I'll be happy to kind of hear your success. So all the best, guys. Thank you so much for being here today. Bye-bye.